Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I am Lee Rooney.
And I'm Mike Booth.
Can we play you every opening week? United win their first league game of the campaign for only the second time in 12 seasons. We review all the talking points from the victory over Crawley Town and look ahead to this weekend's long trip to Essex to take on Colchester United. Not a bad start to the season, was it, Mike? Hey?
Yeah, 3 points is all you could ask for, isn't it?
Yeah, fantastic, wasn't it, really? 3 points and a clean sheet as well, It's always an added bonus. And a pretty comfortable afternoon's work, which we'll get on to soon, won't we? And we were both up at the game, enjoyable day out, even with the cancelled train on the way back. We managed to get back in the end, didn't we? So, yeah, all good in the end. So there you go. Before we get started, just a reminder that once again this season, the podcast has been sponsored by the Carlisle United Sports Club London branch. The London branch is open to all Carlisle United fans. They've got members from Cornwall to Dundee and Houston to Singapore, and of course every part of London and the South East. They regularly meet up on away trips as well as arranging many social events, supporters games and fundraising for the club. They'll be providing us with information for the away games as part of the preview section this season. Again, can find out more about the London branch at their website, carlisleLondonBranch.org. And just a reminder as well, obviously, chances are if you listen to us right now, you already do subscribe to the podcast because it's the easiest way to get it. But if you don't, if you're one of those people who still listens to it online for their laptops or something like that, you can subscribe to us. If you've got a mobile phone, just download any good podcast app, whether it's Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, and just search for Brunton Bugle and click subscribe. And every time a new episode comes out, you'll get a little alert to let you know you can download it and listen to it on the go. And as well, on quite a few of those apps, you can leave reviews as well. So if you can leave us free of a 5-star review on there, that would be wonderful. As well as that, you can follow us on social media at Brunton Bugle on Twitter and Instagram. Also on Facebook, just search for the Brunton Bugle and click like. And we're also on the Be Just on Fear Not Facebook group, and we also post on the Cumbins.net message board. And of course, if you want to go old fashioned, you want to go northeast style, you can drop us an email, bruntonbugle@gmail.com. Let's get into it, Mike. Then we've got a little bit of news to cover before we get on to the Crawley game. Before we get started, something that I think this came out just after we recorded last week, didn't it? Some quite sad news about former Blues defender Nick Anderton. He's having to take a break from the game because he's been diagnosed with, I'm going to have to try and pronounce this right, it's a long word, osteosarcoma. Yes, I think I got that right. Osteosarcoma, which is a rare form of bone cancer. He's had to have an operation to remove part of his, I think it's his femur bone, isn't it, I think. So, he's had that operation, which means he's obviously going to miss quite a bit of football for a while. But, we've seen all the good wishes he's got, haven't we, Mike, this week? And I think we can only, amplify them even further. He was
definitely
decent, he's a good player for us, but a good bloke as well, which is just as important. So, we wish Nick all the best in his recovery. Right, bit of transfer news for you, Mike. Something that came out the morning of the game, didn't it? Some unusual times for these transfer reveals, wasn't there? Two transfers in the last week. One of them was it for like early on the Saturday morning, and then the other one was about 9:30 last night. This one came out. Yeah. One. So basically two more signings coming in, and basically we've covered a goalkeeper in midfield, haven't we? Yeah. So first up, Michael Kelly. 27-year-old...
26.
20, is he 26? I do apologise. Yeah. I got that right. Well spotted. 26-year-old, 6'5" Irish goalkeeper. He signed on a 1-year deal with an option for a further year. It's basically his first club outside Ireland, isn't it? He's basically done a little tour of some of the Irish clubs. In fact, he likes to go back to clubs he's been to before, doesn't he? Looks at things. I'm looking through here. He's started out at Shamrock Rovers. He also spent time with Cabinteely, Longford Town, with those clubs both twice, Bohemians and Bray Wanderers, which is the club that we signed him from. I think he was backup keeper at Bray Wanderers, though, wasn't he? I don't think he was starting that many games for them, I think. So that's quite interesting. He's not one that's unfamiliar to our coaching staff, though, is he, Mike?
No, obviously Paul Gerrard, he had a trial spell at Doncaster, didn't he?
Yeah, so he clearly did enough to impress them to be sort of stuck in Paul Gerrard's mind that he's someone potentially as an option. And he's been brought in to give some competition to Thomas Holy. Simo's comments were quite clear on this, wasn't it? He didn't, as talented as he thinks both Gab Breeze and Scott Simons is, although Scott Simons is out injured for a bit with a shoulder injury. He doesn't want to be relying on them as number twos. He doesn't think it's fair on them, does he?
No. Which is fair enough. And it's good that we've gone for a permanent signing because, as you sort of touched on with your interview with Simo, we only really got room for 2 more loanees.
Yeah. And
it'd be a shame to sort of waste one of them loanees, if you like, on a backup keeper.
And it's a good deal, isn't it? A 1-year deal with that 1-year option means if he does turn out to be, a decent backup, there's always an option there to extend it, isn't there? And if he doesn't, well, you start again next summer, don't you?
Yeah, and by all accounts, he hasn't played a lot of full-time football. So with training regularly, he could turn out to be quite a decent keeper.
Yeah, he could well be. So it'll be interesting to see whether Gab Breeze maybe goes out on loan as a result of that. I hope he does, because I want to see him getting regular football.
Yeah.
There's no point in him being, stuck in the stands each week and just doing the warm-ups with the keepers, is there really? He needs to be getting out there playing. Obviously, Scott Simons with his injury, he's not going to be able to do that at the moment. So, that's the first signing done. Second one, Jaden Harris. Have I got this right? 21-year-old.
I'm guessing so.
So the 21-year-old 6'2" box-to-box midfielder. He's signed on a 3-year deal. A 3-year deal?
I know.
What's one of them? Incredible.
They'll be spinning in his grave if he was dead.
Hang on. I'm going to have to make a note now to put the clown car noise in, because we promised that we wouldn't do that this season. So let me just make a note of that. Thanks, Mike. He signed on a 3-year deal for an undisclosed fee. We apparently triggered his release clause. Now, I can't imagine it's a huge release clause with it being all shot, can you? So, but it's an interesting one, isn't he, Mike? He's got started out at Fulham. Fulham have got a good reputation, haven't they, for producing young players as well. So he started out there, had a spell with Woking on loan. He then left Fulham at the end of his contract, joined Aldershot, had a little spell at Hampton and Richmond Borough with them on loan. But then last season he played quite a lot for them, didn't he? He seems to be a player who's going to give good competition for places.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something has done before in the past, really, because obviously we're going to look at the Crawley game shortly, but with the sort of central midfielders of Guy, Moxon and Gibson, who would you drop out of them 3? But Simo has this ruthless way of, when a player's playing well, finding better players still.
Yeah, when you think back to when we won the League Two title as well, we had a good mix of players who, drop in and out of the team, wouldn't you, in midfield there? So, players are going to get chances. But he's described as a bit of a combative midfielder, quite highly rated. That there is a suggestion that he may be down tools a little bit with the shots when our interest was made clear to him in the last couple of weeks, possibly.
Yeah, but, I've said all along, our best player could leave us, and some of our fans on social media would be saying that they were crap and they never rated them. So.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? It's one of those ones that people say, he's down tools. I don't think he's down tools. He probably just had a couple of bad games. But it sounds like we potentially watched him because he did play against Crawley in a friendly, didn't he? So that seems to be where we maybe... there's a lot of fans saying that's the only reason we signed him. We're not going to sign a player based on just that one game.
No.
He's bound to be someone we've watched. And you've got to forget, Greg Abbott was obviously a head of recruitment in the National League last season, so he'll have seen him play a few times at least. So there's every chance he's one that Greg's recommended there, probably. So interesting. One thing I did find out when I was Googling to find out about him, a bit more about him, he doesn't have his own wiki page because he's not made his league EFL debut yet. But he was involved in a court case over a tackle he made when he was playing at Fulham, I think. He basically, I think that a tackle he made broke a lad's ankle, and that lad's had to retire basically after a few operations. And I think they tried to say Fulham were negligible for the injury, but I think they won the case in the end. Fulham. I don't think it was actually a court case against him.
They couldn't prove he intended to hurt him.
Yeah, basically it's that kind of thing. So tough in the tackle at the very least. I think that we can see that, can't we? So 2 new signings. Pretty happy with those 2 coming in. Maybe just need a couple more. Do you reckon, Mike?
Yeah, I think we need cover in defence, and obviously news came out today that Brennan Dickinson had a slight tear on his ACL, which doesn't look good. because, well, you and me both thought that this could be a big season for Brennan. So, yeah, maybe we need another left-sided player as well.
That as well. So we all three of us have put a curse on him, basically, unfortunately. So we do apologise, Brennan. but yeah, maybe left side good, depending on whether Taylor Charters can get back fit fairly soon. But I think attack as well. Maybe need one more strike, I think seems suggesting. Because obviously Bilardo is one of the backups at the moment, and he's not going to be ready yet, is he? So, well, there you go. We'll have to see. Only other little bit of news to cover is the kiosk AGM and elections. So last weekend saw the as I said, the AGM take place for kiosk, and that included obviously the elections to the board. There were 6 places up for grabs, and out of the 8 candidates, the following 6 were elected. They were Billy Atkinson, these are in alphabetical order by the way, Billy Atkinson, Chris Armstrong, Dan McLennan, David Noble, Kieran Bowman, and Matt Spooner. You'll obviously recognise one of those names because it's one of our co-host, Dan McLennan. He's obviously not on this week, so we might have a little chat about it next week and kiosk and that kind of thing, possibly just to get some of his thoughts. Long-standing member Norman Still was not re-elected, while Gerard Gornall was the other candidate who did not get enough votes to secure a place on the board. So, like I said, we might have a chat about that if we have time in the next episode, but it depends if we can fit it in, because we've got a few bits to get into the next episode. It's going to be a little bit different, so there you go. Well, let's move on to the match review then, Mike. That's the news cover. I think that's the news cover, isn't it? I can't think of anything else.
That's everything, yeah.
It's one of those ones at the start of the season, so much happening. You sometimes forget what you've actually covered, don't you? That's half the problem. So there you go. Because I think we covered Sam Fishburne going out on loan last week. I'm fairly certain we did. I'm not 100% there, but he's gone to Blythe Spartans anyway, just in case we didn't for 3 months. So there you go. So let's talk about the game. Carlisle United 1, Crawley Town 0. Yeah, as we said at the start, Mike, I mean, we couldn't really ask for a huge amount more to start the season, except maybe a few more goals. I mean, overall, I'm trying to think of the best phrase to put this. A really confident and well-drilled performance by the Blues in this game, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, we could have had more. I mean, this is proof that stats really don't tell the full story.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously 66% possession. In fact, I've been going to football games now for about 25 years, and I honestly don't think I've ever seen a team do so little with so much of the ball.
Yeah, it's a very fair point, isn't it? Because there's times obviously on the beach where we'd have not much of the ball, wouldn't we? But
yeah.
we do a lot with it, and the opposition would still do bits with it. But in this case, I mean, the stats are quite damning in terms of shots, aren't they? I mean, 6 shots from them, 0 on target. 23 shots from us, 9 on target.
Yeah.
It's that tells its own story in itself, doesn't it? We've basically made the most of our possession.
Exactly, and it didn't seem like they had that much of the ball, because a lot of it was just they were just passing it around the defence, and then we'd close them down, which is a credit to the work and fitness that they've been doing. And then they just end up lumping it long anyway. And they were the kind of long balls that, if 1 out of 20 finds its man, he's clean through on goal, and it's probably an equaliser, but none of them made it. So
no, absolutely. So as you sort of mentioned there, possession wise, we were well behind them, and they had a lot more passes actually as well in terms of those things, something like twice as many passes. But as you said, a lot of them were just short balls across the back three, and we were quite happy to let them have it. It's interesting. I spoke to James Phillips of Radio Cumbria on the Big Sports Show, and as he said there, it's almost like they didn't watch us against Bolton and see that we're quite happy to let those centre-backs have the ball. And then when that first pass comes out to the midfield, we're on them like flies around a shit, basically, aren't we? Basically, just desperately trying to nick the ball off them. And with the midfield we've got playing at the moment, we're always going to have a bit of success there. In terms of let's talk about the goal, because it's singular. I mean, what a quick fire start to the season it was, wasn't it, really? I mean, I think about a minute or two before this, we could have actually taken the lead with a low ball in that was actually really well defended, to be fair. But that could have easily been 1-0. But then this ball comes into the box, and initially fell to Dennis. His first sort of right foot shot was it wasn't the strongest, wasn't it? It sort of got blocked, and it bubbled about a bit. And then one of the defenders tries to willy the ball forward. He smashes it basically into Moxon's face.
Which was a wonderful, deft assist.
Do you know what? I was surprised because normally the BBC don't give those sort of things assists, but it's down as a Moxon assist.
Yeah,
so it is assist.
It should be.
So yeah, it hit Moxon in the face. It landed nicely for Dennis. I tell you what, if you watch the pitchside Blues footage of this, he takes a brilliant touch to get out of his feet. Really does. Gets it onto his left foot, and then the finish is a really clever one, isn't it? Because the easy thing would be go low and just try and hit it as hard as you can. What he does, he hits it into the ground, and he basically bounces up over the dive of the goalkeeper.
They're a nightmare for keepers to try and save them as well, because you don't quite know how much it's going to bounce.
Yeah, so basically it bounced over the keeper and into the back of the net, and we were right behind it, wasn't it? You could tell it was going in from the second he hit it. It was...
Yeah.
And then obviously pandemonium and then celebrations in the stands, and you think, yep, this is the start we want. This is much better than last season, the opening day against Colchester, which was appalling, if anyone remembers back that far. And yeah, there was plenty of chances after that, wasn't there, really?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be interested to see the expected goal stats, because we had quite a few, didn't we? And then there was a couple of controversial offside calls. Obviously, we had the Edmondson goal, which was rightly offside.
But this one basically was a bit of sort of a ball across the goal, wasn't it? And I think Moxon fell over, didn't he? I think in the build-up, he was lying next to the post, and as the ball came back in, someone shot and it hit Moxon and landed nicely for Edmondson to put into the empty net. But Moxon was a long way offside, basically. So
yeah.
Frustrating that one. But I mean, Dennis could have had a few, couldn't he? Really, he had a decent game up front. I mean, I've heard some people suggest other than scoring the goal, he was awful. I mean, it's nonsense. No. Absolute nonsense to suggest he was awful.
I mean,
he was missing sitters.
The goal was classic Dennis, where if you've got a team deep in their half, he just finds a little pocket of space, and then the ricochet happens and he's just there to pounce.
Yeah, and he looks so fitter and in better shape this season as well, which you'd expect because he arrived carrying an injury, didn't he, I think, when he first came in January. But like you said, he found that bit of space. There was another one, I think, where the keeper made a great save. There's another one where another close range where he got blocked. There's one in the second half I think people might be referring to where they felt it was a sitter, but actually at full speed the ball comes to him and it's just that bit behind him, and he just has to snatch at it, doesn't he? He doesn't have time to think and take a touch. He just has to have a go at it, basically, and unfortunately he couldn't do enough to get a second goal. But yeah, like I said, there's some of the chances. Jordan Gibson created another great chance as well. He created it on his own, didn't he, for a brilliant run from his own half. And then he plays the ball. I think as you said, we thought, I think Edmondson played the ball back and we thought, that's a rubbish pass, there's no one there. And they just appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Incredible little run.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And Gibson, well, to us at least, it seemed like he was playing sort of like a number 10 free role. Yeah. And we didn't see him with a lot of freedom last season. He had to be sort of quite regimented when he was either playing on the wing or sort of as a number 8. So it was good to see him with the shackles off a little bit. And I say that about Gibson, but Guy was the same, really. Yeah. And, Guy would get forward a bit and Moxon would just slot him behind. And then sometimes Moxon would get forward and Guy'd slot him behind. And after one league game, well, I said the other day, they had a better understanding together than Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard did for England, playing for God knows how many years.
Yeah, that's going back a bit, isn't it? We'll talk about some of those individual performances in a minute. Before we've got a new section coming up in the match review part this season where we're asking you for your 60-second reviews. But before we get on to that, first of all, Mike, just in terms of the team selection and the captaincy, I mean, no major surprises in the team selection. Obviously, the news came out that Toby and Brennan both missed out due to injury, and Jamie Devitt, unfortunately, due to illness, which is just rotten luck, isn't it, really? But hopefully that's not too bad. No major. I think it's pretty much what we predicted, isn't it, the teams? And the captaincy decision as well, a bit of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot on the bench, really, was there? I mean, Crawley made a few changes and maybe had fresher legs nearer the end, and we didn't have a lot to sort of combat that. But I mean, our players were fit enough to go the full 90 anyway, but sometimes you still need fresh legs. With regards to the captaincy, though, I've never been a massive fan of Guy as a captain. I don't think he's got the leadership qualities, but
I
Feeney
feel like
does.
Sorry. I feel like with Guy as captain, there was a feeling of like he's our best player at the time, which he was clearly.
Yeah,
and the way he plays, he's almost playing like a captain, like driving forward and really taking control of games. But it almost does feel like that extra responsibility was just taken a little bit away from his actual game. And I think that there's even been some sort of suggestions that Guy said he's perfectly fine with having it taken away from him, and he feels a bit freer now, which can only be for the best, really, can't it? Because we want to see the best Callum Guy out there on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. We all know what a good player he can be, and whether he's captain or not, Feeney in the middle of that back three is always barking orders, and he's one of the first players over to the referee when a decision is or isn't given our way. But yeah, I think it's the right call. It's obviously not an easy call for a manager to make because you don't want to upset people, but I think it was the right call.
Yeah. Right, so as I mentioned just before, one of the things we're asking for this season is the 60-second review. Well, between 30 and 60 seconds, what we're looking for is fans to give us their thoughts on the game, hopefully to give us a few extra talking points to cover when we're talking about the matches. The best way to do it, if you've got any of our, because I know a lot of people who listen to this already know us, if you happen to have any of our numbers or social media things, just drop us a message and say, I want to contribute, and we'll let you know exactly how. Alternatively, if you want to try and send it maybe to our Facebook page, if you go to the messenger there, you should be able to send an audio thing through that. We'll try and work out the best way to do this. There might be another way we can do this that's a bit better. But so first up, we had 3 people contribute for this week. I think, should we go with young Craig Robson first, Mike? We think Craig might be one of our youngest listeners. If you're younger than him, and I'm not having people who've just had kids saying, well, my kid's listening while I'm doing work, that's cheating. Young Craig is 11 years old, and I know he's a huge fan, and he's very much into, follows the Blues as much as he can with his dad. So this is Craig's 60-second review for us.
Hi, I'm Craig, and this is my 60-second review. I thought we played well and we pressed well. Although we only had 34% possession, we had 23 shots to their 6 and 9 on target to their none. I felt we were never really troubled to the point where they could have scored. We definitely played better than we did at Bradford last season. There's definitely been some change, and good change at that. The new signings all impressed. Moxon looked like a proper League 2 player, not a Scottish second division player. It was as if he'd only ever played proper professional football. Back looked really confident on the ball and seemed to like a good tackle as well. Then Holy's hard to judge because he had no shots to save at all the whole game. But my man of the match has to be Gibson. I thought he played really well, made some great runs and passes in the middle of the park. The only disappointment being the long queue at the fan zone bar, but I'm sure that'll improve. If we can be more clinical in front of goal, it'll be a good season. Up the Blues.
What about that, eh?
Yeah. It's going to put us out of a job, I think.
Nice. I know, I'm going to say, yeah. I think James Phillips can be a bit worried as well. That's terrific stuff there from Craig. Thank you very much. He pretty much summed up everything for us there, didn't he?
Yeah.
I couldn't disagree with the thing you said there, Craig, to be fair. I think it's all spot on. I think we all agree that we thought Gibson had a great game as well. And you mentioned Moxon this. Well, let's get... We talked about midfield there before, Mike, and you mentioned the fact that they looked like a really good partnership, Guy and Moxon. Obviously, Gibson became in that as well, because Gibson was quite deep for a lot of the game as well. He almost was a midfield 3 rather than a 2 and a 1, wasn't it?
I mean, sometimes you don't see a number 10 tracking back so much, but I mean, there was one incident in particular where they had the ball right on the edge of the box and they were sort of ready to pull the trigger, and Gibson just appeared out of nowhere to take it right off his toe, which he often does.
Yeah, it's fantastic, wasn't it? So interesting you mentioned that. So, let's talk about Moxon. What a terrific debut. He looked like he'd been playing, as Craig said there, he looked like he'd been playing at League 2 level for years. He looked so... The thing stand out for me, not just the fact that we've said this in pre-season, he's been really good at nicking the ball and starting attacks and that kind of thing. But his composure on the ball really impressed me, because I think I said to you a few times in the game, didn't I? There was a few times where we were both like, okay, get rid of it now. But no, he just took his time, took a turn on the ball, looked out, picked a pass. Yeah. That's what you want to see, isn't it?
He's got a good range of passing as well. I'd be interested when Patrick's back in the team, because we had it a few times last season where Patrick's on the halfway line with their defence. We didn't really have the players necessarily to pick out that ball over the top, but I think Moxon could well do that. And a lot of his corners as well were, we didn't sort of necessarily challenge their keeper too much with them, but they were really into the right areas. And I think as the players attacking the corners get a better understanding, it's only going to get better.
Absolutely, yeah. I just feel like he really is going to be a big find for us. My thoughts are, I won't be surprised if bigger clubs are looking come January if he carries on the form the way he is.
And I mean, with us bringing in the new midfielder this week as well, because I think, obviously he was a van driver last season, I think playing 50-odd games this season could be a big ask for him. Yeah. So it's good that we're not overly dependent and that we have options to come in as well. Definitely.
I think that's going to be a real bonus, I think. And yeah, like you said, he can only get better as well, which should be a worry for other League Two teams this season. I mean, we sort of touched it already, but Callum Guy, fantastic performance as well, and so strong in the tackle, driving forward. His range of passing looks like it's back to its best, doesn't it? The way he was spraying the ball out wide. Yeah. He's got to work on his shooting, though, hasn't he? I think it's fair to say.
He still hasn't scored, has he?
I don't think he's scored a professional goal yet. He might have scored one, maybe in a JPT or something like that for someone else, but never scored a goal for us. So we really want him to score a goal, but maybe just don't take those 25-yarders, Colin. Just give them to Jordan, maybe. Maybe the best thing to do there. There you go. Should we do another 60-second review then,
cool.
Mike? So up next, we've got Nick Brown against someone we both know. I actually cracked with Nick at half-time in the game, and he seemed quite impressed. So this is what Nick had to say.
A really positive start to the season, right from the off, even sitting outside the ground before the match, a few pints, and there's a really good feeling around the place. And from the minute we stepped in, I feel like the crowd was right behind everything, which made a bit of a change. And then the start, right on the front foot, right from the off, we look a physical, imposing team, plenty running. Moxon looked brilliant. Finn Back was sensational, really. His footwork and his passion and his drive down that side caused them problems. And up front, we could have been a bit more clinical, but we did take our chance. Would have been nice to take a few more of them. On another day, we could have won that 3 or 4, but that'll come. It's still early days in that respect. So, yeah, I just think a really positive start and on to Colchester, and hopefully we can give them a bit of the same medicine and stick a few past them. Up the Blues.
Yeah, that's Nick's review. Not as concise as Craig's. Sorry, Nick. I'm only joking now.
It sounded like our performance really took Nick's breath away, to be honest
It did, didn't it? Yeah. I know Nick likes his running, so maybe he'd been out for a run and maybe he's listening to us while he was doing it. But yeah, no, I couldn't disagree. He mentioned Finn Back there. Let's talk about him then. Obviously, he got man of the match from the club. I wouldn't disagree with that. I think I would have given it to Guy or Moxon myself, but what a debut, really. For, obviously, I know he's played his 5 games in the Championship last season, but to come into a new club and make an impact like that on the opening day, couldn't really ask for a huge amount more, could you?
No, he seemed really determined as well, which is one thing that either makes or breaks a loanee, to be honest. And yeah, it was up and down that touchline. A couple of times he got into the box as well, and we were unlucky that he maybe didn't get an assist or 2, to be honest. It caused them a lot of problems, and like you say, you can't disagree with him being man of the match. It's one of them games where there's a few people, and if they got it, you wouldn't disagree with it. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned him getting into the box there. There's a couple of times where he lost the ball in the corner, and you think, oh, they're going to clear it, and he won it back. And that's when he got into the box, and like I said, just that little bit more composure. He's maybe set up a second goal there, so big promising signs there, like I said, for a young lad coming in. And actually, one of the things that stood out for me was the fact that he probably didn't start the game that quickly. But actually, as he went on, he just seemed to get better and better as the game went on. His confidence really rose. Yeah. So I think we potentially got a real find in there, haven't we? And obviously with Joel Senior to come back in November, we've got some pretty decent backup there as well. So could be quite exciting for second half of the season. I mean, when he came in, I thought that he might be back up when Senior's fit. But I think Senior has a job on his hands to get back in the team, by the looks of things. Yeah, definitely. I think he'll have a little bit of a battle on. I think obviously Nick did actually mention there, obviously, in terms of in fact, actually we'll cover this in a minute because I think Greg might mention this in his 60-second review. I was going to talk about the fan zone outside because he'll have his comments to make on that, no doubt. But yeah, the issue of not scoring enough goals is maybe the only real downside, isn't it? Really, in terms of the game, we
just taking those chances. But that'll come with time, you'd think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to come up against worse teams than Crawley. We're also going to come up against better teams than them. But, for us to limit them and restrict them attacking as much as we did, that's only a good thing. And, teams, if they have to really throw players forward to try and break us down, that's when the gaps will open up for us to hurt them.
Yeah. Right, let's have our third and final 60-second review. This is from Greg, who you've probably heard from before on the show. God knows what he had to say on the match, but here's Greg's thoughts.
Hi Lee, it's Greg. So this is my 60 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever, thoughts on Carlisle at the weekend. I thought it was really, really encouraging. All the outfield players played really, really well. Ones that stood out the most, I would say, is Finn Back, Owen, Moxon and Callum Guy. I thought the link-up play between the two of them was absolutely fantastic. On another day, we could have had 4 or 5 goals. It was easy, really easy. For the money that they've supposedly spent on players, they looked absolutely bang average. The defence was all over the place. The 2 goalkeepers, I couldn't separate them for being erratic. The first half keeper, he was just kicking lazy balls out, and the other one looked like he never played in goals before. So yeah, really, really easy, encouraging start. The squad is thin, but hopefully we'll pick up a few more players and on to the next one.
Wow, that's remarkably comprehensive from Greg. I do know there was a couple of things he wanted to mention. He did want to mention the fact that the referee kept getting in the way of play at one point. I think it was like 3 or 4 times where he was constantly in the way of where he wanted to pass it. I know it's his first game as a Football League referee, but he needs to be a bit better at that, doesn't he? I think
it's not just that. I think we had a blatant penalty turned down for a foul on Corey Whelan.
Yeah,
in the second half.
That one, I've seen it back on the Pitch Side Blues, and I'm not as convinced as I was in real time. I don't know, maybe if it's just the speed of it when it happened that it looked nailed on, but it's But
not only that, obviously referees don't see every call, and that's fine. You can't expect them to see every call. But the one thing that really wound me up is every throw-in or free kick that they had, they were taking it like 10, 15 yards further up the pitch than it should have been.
Didn't get on top of that earlier.
There's no excuse for that.
Didn't get on top of that, which is a bit frustrating, but there you go. You mentioned about Crawley Town. Let's talk a little bit about them. I'd agree with him. I thought they were distinctly average. I mean, little Dom Telford up front, if he's on $4,000 a week for them, they're not getting the value for money so far. Because he looks like I expected in that he had a brilliant first half season where everything went for him at Newport. He's now come to a new club where it maybe isn't set up for him and to make the best of his strengths. And I genuinely wouldn't be amazed if he only got like 6 or 7 goals this season for them.
By the looks of things. And they just didn't really seem to have much in the way of a plan B, did they?
No. Attack-wise, they had some quality there, but defensively, they looked a bit of a shamble. I mean, you mentioned the 2 goalkeepers there. I mean, the lad in goal first half, they'd signed on loan from Brentford. I'm guessing the day before the game. It was only announced on the morning of the game. And he, like you said, he looked like... I think he's had a loan spell somewhere else recently as well, so it's not like he's never played before. But he looked like he'd been told to pass out from the back, but he hadn't had a chance to train with them yet. So he didn't really know what to expect from them and how to play the ball to them and, how they liked it and stuff like that. And the guy in the second half, he like Greg said, he just looked lost, didn't he?
He looked like he'd won a competition to play in goal for Crawley for a half.
Yeah, he was not great at all. So, I mean, I can see them struggling a bit. We actually didn't mention as well, did we, the video that was put up the day or so before the game. The owners of...
That's since been taken down.
The owners of Crawley, Wagner United, they put a video up. They had this scouting competition for the game, didn't they? And they said, this was second place. And it was a YouTube video of an American guy dressed as a Red Devil with paint all over him and stuff. Making a lot of derogatory comments about us, weren't they? And I think that even like all the Crawley fans were, this is embarrassing, please delete it.
Yeah.
And I think they got the message pretty quickly. I'm fairly sure it probably broke some EFL regulations about respecting opposition and stuff, but hey, the most important thing is we got the 3 points, so it doesn't really.
We had the last laugh.
Exactly, needless to say, I had the last laugh, as Alan Partridge once said. A couple of other points to talk about, Mike. Defensive solidity. Never really looked under threat, did we? I think Mellish and Feeney just carried on where they left off last season. Thomas Holy didn't have a huge amount to do, did he? But did give us one scary moment where he came out for a ball over the top and it bounced quite awkwardly, and because of his height, he ended up sort of kneeing it up above his own head, didn't he?
Yeah.
Offside flag went off, to be fair, though, so it didn't really make any difference. But you mentioned about his kicking, didn't you, Thomas Hurley?
Like his kicking. I mean, like with Paul Farman, obviously he could kick it far, and he seemed like he was putting absolutely everything into it to kick it far. But Holy, it seems like he's holding back a bit, because if he went full pelt, it'd like be straight over the back of the waterworks end. I think because he's so massive, it just seems like, everything. He has to be a little bit cuter with things, otherwise he'll just boot it out.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so it's Thomas Haley there, and Ben Barkley making his full debut as well. It's interesting to mention all these great performances. He was excellent as well. Some great tackles in, and he's so composed on the ball. He looks like he could be a real find, doesn't he?
Yeah, he played a few very good passes into the midfield as well, where, you'd kind of forgive him for lumping it forward because he was under a bit of pressure. But, yeah, he'd just pick out Guy or Moxon and start an attack off. It was very, very good. And, yeah, can't fault Simo and Greg's work so far.
As we've said with that one before, the shades of James Barrett in terms of that transfer, in there, it on paper looks a bit underwhelming, and you're like, we've signed, Stockport's fifth choice centre back on loan for the season, but actually he's a better player than that, isn't he? He's clearly shown that he's got a bit of quality about him, so he genuinely could be a really good signing. And just a couple of little funny talking points from the game. Are we going to talk about our little friend, the baby seagull?
We have to, yeah.
Anyone who was paying attention may have noticed during the second half, a little baby seagull appeared on the touchline in the paddock south sort of touchline, sort of to the right of the away dugout as you're looking at the pitch from the paddock. He just spent the second half going up and down the line, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or she, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, I don't want to presume. But yeah, it was a bit confused, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then some stewards tried to sort of usher it out, but then accidentally nearly ushered it onto the pitch, which is very funny.
If you watch back the I'm sure it appears on the pitch side blues briefly as well. I think possibly in the last few minutes. I think when we were on the attack at some point, it was very close to getting involved. So yeah, it survived though. That's the important thing. Maybe it's a lucky mascot for the season. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what we can look at it. Quick bit about the fan zone outside. Obviously, the new fan zone was introduced, wasn't it? And we decided to come down a bit earlier to give it a try.
Yeah.
Very, very busy. And that's where the issue came up, wasn't it? So
yeah. Well, we got there about 2, didn't we?
Yes.
And it was about 20 to 3 that we got to the front of the queue.
Yeah.
And by the time we were at the front of the queue, it was just foam coming out the...
Well, one barrel was foam when we were about 2 or 3 behind getting to the front of the queue. But by the time we got to the front, both of them were pumping it out. And that was for the lager one on the right-hand side. Yeah. The other one on the left-hand side, there was a queue still there. But if we'd gone and joined the back of it, we never would have got served in time, would we, really? Yeah. So it's one of those ones, wasn't it? The way it was done seemed to be that they had 2 lads in there who were serving, and it was a case of one was taking the order and then one was pouring. I'd like to think if you can have a queue that big and a crowd that big, you can just pour a load of pints because people are going to take them. They're not going to complain that it's not just freshly come out, are they? They want to drink, basically.
Well,
so maybe...
Exactly.
In principle, it's a good idea, and the setup with the porta cabin looks really smart. It really does. I think it just needs a bit of tweaking in terms of how they serve it.
Yeah, and I mean, the spot where we sort of joined the queue, I've been in that sort of spot at other grounds in the past for a pint, and I haven't really waited more than 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, 40 minutes is a bit silly. And that was before even they had issues with the pumps as well, I think. So yeah, that probably needs a little bit of a looking at, I think, in terms of how they do that going forward.
And it's a shame as well, because there'll be some people that did that, had a break from their usual pre-match routine and went and thought, this is rubbish, I'm not going to do this again. And that's a shame.
Yeah, it's a shame because you lose your customer then, don't you? So there you go. So I think that pretty much rounds it up, Mike, then, doesn't it? Good 3 points. No real complaints about it. Maybe getting a few more goals. That's the only real complaint I think anyone can pick out from it. So pretty happy with that. Right, we'll take a short break and then we'll be back with the second half of the show.
Hi, it's Morgan Feeney, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
So we're back for the second half of the show, and it's now time to do the Colchester United away preview. First up, before we do that though, Dan has got a question for us, Mike, this week.
Oh.
God knows if we're going to be able to get the answer to one, because I had a little listen beforehand. I haven't cheated, but even off the top of my head, I'm struggling a little bit with this one. So here's Dan's question for this week.
Today's quiz question. In January 2014, we got beat 4-2 at home to Colchester United. We had 7 different nationalities playing for our team that day. Can you name all 7 and at least one player for each nationality?
Did he say 2014 there? I don't really want to play against. So 2014, right?
So we're League One then?
No, 2014. If it's September 2014, then that would be League 2. We just
January 2014?
January, maybe we were League 1 then. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have a think about that one. We'll come back to it after we've done the predictions later on, just before the X-Files section. Maybe the best thing to do. So gives everyone else a chance to think while they're listening as well. Up first in the preview section, it's obviously, once again, the Behind Enemy Lines part. So this week we spoke to James from the Views from the U's podcast. I had a chat with James and I discussed a number of subjects, including the army of ex-Ipswich players, or the ex-Ipswich retirement home that they've become in recent years.
Yeah.
Shamal George and his recent transfer to Livingston. Their owner, Robbie Cowley, and how he's perceived by the fans, and of course their hopes for the season ahead. So here's the chat I had with James earlier this week. James, thanks for joining us. I think you joined us last season actually here on the Brunton Bugle to preview the Colchester game way back in pretty much the same time last year, wasn't it? Actually,
yeah, it was. Yeah, glad to be back, mate. Glad to be back.
Yeah, great to have you on. Your season got underway last weekend with I think it's probably fair to say, one of your toughest trips of the season, actually, Northampton away. And you put in a battling performance in a 3-2 defeat, but I suppose the main thing is it's still a loss, isn't it? What are the expectations like this season for Colchester? I know that many people are tipping you to go down, and if I'm honest, I think a couple of us in our preview episode predicted you guys were going to really struggle as well. After what's been basically a few years of struggle for you generally in the league, what are the expectations like for you guys?
Yeah, mate. So I think it has been an interesting pre-season, if an uninspiring one, I would say. I think pretty much everyone has tipped us to go down. So I think we did a preview pod on our last podcast, and I think we went through it, and all the big magazines and things had us 23rd, 24th. So there's kind of that element to it. I think building on where we finished last season, just sort of avoided. Well, in the end, we sort of finished lower mid-table, but it was looking dreary at various parts of last season. Wayne Brown, who took caretaker charge towards the end of last year, got the job permanently. So there's kind of that new management buzz around the place, I guess, at the moment. However, I think if you spoke to most Colchester fans, they'd probably put us sort of lower mid-table and be quite happy with that, given the last couple of years. I think in terms of our sort of early start in the transfer window as well, has been pretty uninspiring. But in terms of the game in the weekend, it was actually a pleasant surprise to see us playing the way we were. Actually, it was a real battling performance. We didn't perhaps set up as we expected either. 2 strikers up front. It's been a long time since we've seen that at Colchester United, and you'll often hear Colchester United fans moan about only playing one up front, so we haven't got that excuse anymore. But yeah, Saturday was a real battling performance, probably against I think you mentioned it there, probably one of the top teams in the league. And yeah, it was could have easily been 3-3 if not for a really great save by the Northampton keeper just at the end of the game. I think there was two really soft penalties as well on both sides. Ours was perhaps a bit more of a penalty than the Northampton one, which was for a handball, even though the bloke's arm was behind his back. So yeah, it was battling performance. Obviously disappointing to lose, but it's actually probably spurred quite a bit of confidence around the place, given the sort of pre-season expectations, I think.
Yeah, it's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, when you look back last season, there was 2, I think it's fair to say, basket case clubs down near the bottom, and that sort of gave everyone else a bit of hope. This year, it feels so wide open that it is quite hard to actually pin down the 2 clubs that are going to go down, I think. obviously you mentioned in terms of recruitment. Looking back to last summer, I think we made a point about the fact that your recruitment policy seemed to be to go through the Ipswich Town release list. I think it's fair to say. Didn't really work quite as you'd hoped, maybe, in terms of giving you that bit of experience to add to the youth you had on your side. How are those players getting on now? I mean, obviously a lot of them are still there, aren't they?
Yeah, so we signed a lot of them on 2-year contracts, and I think the majority of them are over 30. So we have probably Cole Scouse, who's pushing 37 now, I think, and he's in his final year of his contract with us. But he sort of, despite some shaky performances at times, really came into his own towards the back end of the season, sort of playing that more defensive midfield role, and he's actually turned out to be one of the better additions, I have to say, towards the team. Does the stuff that no one notices or likes to notice. We've got Alan Judge as well, which I think I was sort of saying on our podcast last week that most people perhaps outside of Colchester United go, "Oh, Alan Judge at Colchester, that's a big signing for them." But actually, most Colchester fans will probably tell you he didn't have a great season last year. He was sort of in and out of the side, played by injury a little bit. I'm not convinced he was particularly enjoying his football either. And I think he only made about 20 appearances last year, some off the bench as well. And probably missing that kind of spark that you'd probably expect from an Alan Judge. Freddie Sears obviously came back from Ipswich, came back into Colchester for his second spell with us, and really hit the ground running. Actually got quite a lot of goals last year. Probably the main reason we stayed up. A lot of our goals came through him, and I kind of fully expect that to carry on throughout the season as well. Luke Chambers in at the back as well. He's actually proved to be sort of slotted in there quite nicely. Actually, seems to be one of the first names on the team sheet now, and has gone in there quite nicely. Tommy Smith, on the other hand, less so than New Zealand's captain. He's been hit with a lot of stick from Colchester fans, has to be said. His performances really haven't lived up to expectation, and so he seems to be sort of dropped from the squad at certain times last year. But yeah, so not great for him. But I mean, other than that, we sort of had a few come in. John Akinde came in January. From Gillingham, which was a pretty big signing for us. But again, he didn't really hit the ground running. We didn't see a lot of him last year. He started on Saturday, so I'm fully expecting to see a bit more from him this year. So it'll be interesting if we get much more out of him. But again, he's getting on a bit now as well. Brought in Tom Dallison halfway through the season from Crawley as well, who's he's been brilliant actually. He's a really, really top class defender, central defender. Has been a great addition to the side. So I think it was kind of mix and match in terms of last season, and we haven't really brought a lot in this year, to be honest.
Yeah, you mentioned about in terms of this summer. You obviously had a couple of departures. You got the young lad whose name escapes me now. I think he went to Fleetwood, didn't he?
Brendan Wiradu. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah, he really impressed me actually when we played you last season.
Yeah.
Shamal George is one that stands out, especially for Carlisle fans, because obviously he had a loan spell at Brunton Park. It wasn't the most successful loan spell, shall we say? I mean, I think he made 4 appearances, and his last appearance he threw 2 goals in, basically. So he's not that well remembered at Carlisle, but he clearly was great for you. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was your player of the season last year, wasn't he? I think he made some amazing appearances, and even the opening day last season, he was man of the match in that game against us. How big of a blow is him leaving?
That is a massive blow. Well, even Wiradu going is a huge blow, because we seem very light in midfield, and Wiradu, frankly, is. I mean, even when he joined us from Charlton, it was well known that he was a top League One, lower Championship standard player. He's a fantastic player, and even nicer guy. He's come on the podcast before, and really nice guy. And it was such a shame to see him go. He's such a creative midfielder. He can get goals, but his work rate is just unbelievable. He'll run all games, so that was a massive loss. But the George loss is potentially even bigger. I think he really impressed when he came in. He really hit the ground running. He stole that number 1 jersey back from. I know he didn't actually wear number 1, but he stole that sort of first goalkeeper slot off of Dean Gherkin when he came in, and really hit the ground running. He was fantastic. If it wasn't for George last year, we conceded a lot of goals last year, but it would have been a lot more if it wasn't for Shamal George. And I think the fee was undisclosed, but by all reports it was around 75 to 100k, which was very disappointing. Actually, we would have liked a lot more money for him. But yeah, so two massive losses. We haven't really brought anyone in to replace Wiradoo, and that leaves us quite light in midfield. Whereas we've brought in Sam Hornby from Bradford. He was on loan with us last year while George was out injured, and he didn't really massively impress, to be honest. Sort of standard League Two goalkeeper, I think. And so it's a bit disappointing that we haven't really replaced quality with quality in that goalkeeper spot. So I'd say George is a huge loss for us.
Yeah. In terms of the players coming in over the summer, there's only been 3 additions. Obviously, you mentioned Hornby there already. And you signed, I think, a young lad from West Ham who's I've not heard of before, so he's a newbie to me. Alex Newby's the only one that really stands out to me because he was at Rochdale. He actually really impressed me when we played against Rochdale last season. When we beat them, he was the best player for them comfortably. Really good player. So you're working with a very tight and not a particularly young squad anymore, is it really? You look at the average age of it, I think it's one of the highest in the division, isn't it? Are you happy? I mean, obviously, by the sounds of things, you aren't particularly happy with the way things are at the moment in terms of that.
No, well, I think... So we ran through the squad on our last pod. Actually, there is very few players sort of in that mid-20s range where you've probably got 50% of the squad who are pushing 30 or above 30, and 50% of the squad who are under 20. And there seems to be a bit of misbalance. It seems light in places where we're going to have to be relying on our youth system. Obviously, we've got a sort of proud culture of doing that in Colchester anyway. Yeah. But there's really no one who's standing out within that youth system at the moment. No one who's really had a great deal of games. Our right back, Junior Shamadou, is probably the biggest standout, and hopefully you'll see him on Saturday because he's fantastic. He sort of plays that wing back role, gets up and down the pitch. He's a bit weak defensively, but he's only 19. Fantastic player. So he's probably who stands out most. I mean, other than that we are weak all over the place. So it's only really going to take 1 or 2 injuries, especially in that midfield, before it's not looking great. We re-signed Amir Hughes. Club tried to tie it up as a brand new transfer, but we all know it was just a new contract signing. He's already injured. It looks light all over the place, really. I think Alex Newby is probably the most exciting signing we've brought in. I think he got about a minute of game time on the weekend. Seems a bit unfit at the moment, and then he played in a friendly last night against Stowmarket Town. So I'm not fully expecting him to play on the weekend. He may make an appearance, but really looking forward to seeing him in a Colchester United shirt. I think, like you say, he was probably one of the standout players for Rochdale last year. I was quite surprised we grabbed hold of him, actually, and he loves to run with the ball at his feet. He puts defenders on the back foot. It's kind of what we need in that squad at the moment. So really looking forward to seeing him get going.
Let's talk about your manager, Wayne Brown. You mentioned him earlier. A bit of a legend as a player, I think. Done well in his previous caretaker spells to get you out of trouble, and now he's got the job full time. Is he the right man for the job? Because it does seem that there's quite a culture with your club of promoting from within or giving people a chance coming up from the youth setup. Do you think he's the right man for it?
It's an interesting one, Wayne Brown. So he came in obviously last year, did fairly well particularly towards the end of last year. But that's not his first caretaker charge, actually, and he's been I think before that, his previous caretaker roles, he really struggled. So it was a bit of an interesting one towards the end of last year. I think they say culture, we've got that culture of promoting within. A lot of fans, we didn't really want to see it. We wanted an external appointment because I think this is the 4th or 5th on the trot now where we've brought someone in from internal, and it hasn't worked out in previous years, to be quite frank about it. Yeah. So there's a bit of a disappointment that it didn't go external. Having said that, Wayne Brown, bit of a legend around Colchester United, especially for the years in the Championship with the club. He's got the support there. I personally, I think we would have been better going a different direction. I think most Colchester fans would say that throughout the last 10 years, it really has been a pretty slow decline for the club, and a lot of that is we do pin on the chairman, probably rightly so, and the culture that he's sort of brought in there. But we'll get behind Brown. I don't think he's necessarily the right man for the job, but he did well in non-league as well, and hopefully it works out.
interesting you mentioned the chairman there, because that was my next question. I've got to ask you about Robbie Cowley.
Yeah.
Now, he's clearly done a lot for the club down the years. Can't doubt that. You've got your brand new stadium, and you've been in the Championship, things like that. But what are the fans viewing him now? Because it, like you said, it's been a real downward spiral over the last 10 years or so. It just seems to be that he's tried to do things a little bit differently. It hasn't worked, and it seems like, I'm just looking from outside. It just looks like the money's been pulled, and you basically having to be totally self-sufficient now.
So I think that's his argument. He's trying to make the club self-sufficient. I think the fans' argument is no football club is self-sufficient, especially one like Colchester United. I think some of the biggest issues around, our club are to do with the chairman and some of the approach he's taken, particularly through COVID, which obviously was a difficult time for a lot of people, but particularly coming out of COVID, he just didn't get it right. So even when restrictions were lifted, we were probably the only club in the Football League with still restrictions in place. Just small things. So, not being able to pick what seat you sit in, you're given a allocation of you're in this block and you'll end up where you want. Doesn't really bother me, but I know a lot of fans it did. And, as you'll know, you've got a season ticket or something, you get used to those people around you. So little things like that. I think on the direction in terms of really focusing in on youth, we've given it a good go, and clearly we've been able to produce some good talent. I think you look at Sammy Smoddix, who just recently went to Blackburn Rovers in the week, Frankie Kent, who's at Peterborough, Freddie Ladapo up at Rotherham. We've brought a lot of top players through. Unfortunately, though, that when the philosophy is to bring those players through and then sell them for profit, it doesn't really tend to lead to great results for the first team. I think you're right. The money simply he's not investing that money. He wants the club to be self-sufficient, but in order to be self-sufficient, it's got to be making money. It's got to be getting fans through the door. We've probably struggled to. I think these days we're lucky if we get 3,200 in the ground for a sort of medium league game, unless we're playing someone big. We'll probably push 4,000. It's not what it used to be. The stadium is sort of out of town, not out of town, but on the edge of town. It makes it difficult for fans to get there, and a lot of the fan engagement has dropped off in recent years. And there's very little effort going into actually getting people into the ground and getting people back into the club. I think that's where a lot of the frustration with the chairman lies at the moment, and all of that I think has just led to that general decline over the last few years. And it's certainly very different to when I first started supporting Colchester United, and first year I was going, we won promotion to the Championship. So it's changed a lot, and I think it's kind of getting to that point now. I think it really is. I don't know if you saw there was a video last season as well where he came outside and started having a bit back and forth with our fans. And
I saw a little bit of that the other day.
Yeah, and he sort of said, "Well, it's my club, not your club," and that kind of just summed it all up, really. So. People aren't happy about it, but what can you do? Someone owns the football club, Yeah,
exactly that. Well, James, I really appreciate you giving up your time. As usual, we always end up this bit with asking you for your prediction for this weekend's game. So obviously it's your first home game of the season, so what are you going to go for?
Do you know what? I'll go for a 1-0 win. Hopefully we nick it. Not knowing a lot about how your first game went or what your expectations are, but hopefully I'm going for 1-0. Yeah.
Well, we're quietly optimistic up here this season. A lot of people have predicted us to be about 18th, 19th this season, but we think we can maybe do a little bit better than that. But all the best, James. Thanks very much, and I wish you the best for the rest of the season after this weekend.
Well, thank you, Lee.
Okay, thanks once again to James for giving up his time to speak to us this week. We always really appreciate when these opposition fans come on, because obviously, you have to fit in around people's work and stuff like that. So it's really, really grateful. Doesn't sound that encouraging for Colchester this season, though, does it, Mike? It sounds like it's going to be another long, tough one, doesn't it, really? And I think the disquiet with the owner as well puts him in a position where, even off the field, things aren't great either. So
yeah, well, I mean, we all sort of tipped them to certainly be struggling this season. So no huge surprises there, then, is there? In terms of the away pub for this game, the London branch are recommending the Bricklayers Arms, which is at 27 Bergholt Road, Mile End, Colchester, and the postcode is CO45AA. So
Colchester game this weekend, obviously down at the JobServe Community Stadium. I think that's Robbie Cowley's company, isn't it? JobServe. I'm pretty sure that's where he made his money. Referee for this game is James Oldham from Derbyshire. It's his 4th season as an EFL referee. It's his first game he's taken charge of the season. He didn't take charge of any last weekend, I don't think. Last season he handed out 119 yellow cards and 4 red cards in 30 games. So averaging about four yellow cards a game, but not
it's pretty average, isn't it?
Yeah, not too many red cards though, which is good to see, I suppose. The last United game he took charge of was the 2-0 defeat at Rochdale back in March. He gave the host a very deserved penalty in this game for a bit of a lazy tackle, I seem to remember from, I think it was from Whelan actually, I can't remember exactly, but yeah, it was a pretty obvious penalty. Head-to-head record, it's going to be the 56th time the two sides have met, and so far United have won 19, there's been 13 draws, and Colchester have won 23, so they're out in front on this one, I'm afraid. Just looking at their sort of makeup of the club and stuff. So obviously Wayne Brown is their manager. He was appointed in January 2022. He was a bit of a legendary player for them. He made over 100 appearances for them, and he was part of the team that got to the championship back in the noughties. I think he had about two. He's had 2 other caretaker spells, hasn't he, Mike? Because I think he's been involved in the youth setup there, but he's also managed in non-league. This is something that Colchester like to do, don't they? They like to go from within, and I think even like James was saying there, it does get to a point where you say, okay, why don't we try something different, try someone from the outside? But they seem to be quite stubborn and sticking to this, don't they?
Yeah, and I mean, over the past, I want to say 10 years or so, they just seem to be on a consistent, gradual decline, to be honest. Yeah,
they were always a really strong team in League One when we were up there, weren't they? There was a team we thought, we're going to have a tough afternoon here, and they've always had a reputation for producing young players. But that really seems to have dropped off in recent seasons, and they're still selling the odd one. But you do get to a point where you reach a saturation point with these things, don't you? And you can't consistently rely on having to sell a player every single season.
Yeah,
you're going to get caught out sooner or later.
Yeah, and that seems to be happening right now.
Obviously, last season they finished 15th, which looks fairly solid, but they had similar to us, they had a sort of decent run to drag themselves away from trouble, didn't they? Which sort of helped them a bit. Pre-season odds-wise, 50-1 joint favourites for relegation with Barrow, I think it was. So the bookies seem to be quite confident they're gonna have a tough time with it. Transfers-wise, not been very busy, have they?
Nope.
I mean, I'm looking through here. I mean, they've let a fair few go in the summer. Dean Gherkin being one of the standout ones, the experienced goalkeeper. A lot of younger sort of players, I think, that I've never really heard of. To be honest, they probably didn't make that many appearances for them. But then they've also lost Brendan Wiradu, who's gone to Fleetwood, and obviously Shamal George mentioned before, who was fantastic for them. And, we might joke about how bad he was for us in his loan spell, but can't be doubted that he had a really good time at Colchester in terms of his performances.
A lot of their fans were saying that he kept them up, basically.
Yeah, because they conceded a shed load of goals last season, but it would have been even more if it wasn't for him. Remember that opening game of last season? He was brilliant, wasn't he? He was probably comfortably man of the match, I think, in that game. So yeah, in terms of the ones coming in, Sam Hornby was on loan last season from Bradford, the goalkeeper. He's coming on a free transfer. Oh no, sorry, for an undisclosed fee. By all accounts, a bit underwhelming from what I can gather. He's not been the greatest for them. I don't know if they've got a backup keeper. We'll look at the squad in a minute, but I unless they've got a young keeper who's never made an appearance, and that's why it's not showing up. But I don't think they've got a backup keeper at the moment, which is a little bit worrying for them, I think.
Yeah.
Alex Newby's the one that stands out, isn't he? In terms of signings, there's some out there through the signings. There's a young lad from West Ham we've never really heard of, but Alex Newby impressed for Rochdale, didn't he, in the last couple of years?
Yeah, and I think Rochdale will be quite. Was he released from Rochdale? Or?
I don't know if he was released or left. I have a feeling he was released. Actually, it's a strange one because I would have. It's one of the looks at it. I wouldn't have minded him coming to us. But then you wonder, why has he ended up at Colchester?
Exactly, and if he was released, there's always why was he released from Rochdale?
Yeah, I'm just checking it. I think it's Ted Collins is the backup goalkeeper. I think he's a youngster, basically, he's come through their academy. So again, not a huge amount of experience there, as it's similar to what we had at the start of the season. So a bit worrying for them there. Last time out, they played Northampton Town. Pretty much the toughest game they could have asked to start with, isn't it, really, other than Stockport?
And they did all right.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean,
obviously it was an 89th minute winner, wasn't it, for Northampton? But
yeah, I mean, they pegged them back twice. They went behind on 2 occasions and managed to get equalisers both times. And then Northampton's winner came in the 89th minute, which is a bit of a sucker punch. But from what James was saying there as well, they could have won it in injury time, but for a brilliant save by the Cobblers keeper. So they probably take a little bit of encouragement for that. But again, you look at the squad. I mean, look at the team that's out there. It doesn't terrify you, does it? There's a bit of experience in there, but it doesn't stand out and think, wow, this is going to be a tough game, does it?
No, exactly. And I think we said in pre-season they're a little bit of an old folks' home, aren't they?
Well, let's move on. Look through the squad here, Mike. I mean, is there anyone really who stands out to you as a real worry and someone who's going to be a real challenge to us?
No, I mean, there's a few sort of relatively big names in there, I'd say. Tommy Smith, Luke Chambers played a lot of his career at Championship level.
Yeah. Well, you look at the attack, actually. You've got Alex Newby, mentioned already, Freddie Sears, John Akinde, and Frank Nouble.
Yeah.
That in theory should be a decent attack. But maybe people are basing it on remembering those players 3 or 4 years ago. That's the problem.
Exactly. And I think that's the case with quite a few of their players, to be honest with you. Alan Judge as well.
Yeah, Akinde's one, definitely. He's never really hit the height he was at Barnet, has he, really? He's been solid since then.
Not since one of them random Twitter accounts had that rumour that he was going to sign for us, and so many people bought it that Barnet actually released a statement to say that he wasn't going to sign for us.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
Freddie Sears is probably the only one really stands out to me, as you think that, he could still be a big goal threat, it could be dangerous. But I look through it and I'm not terrified at all. I genuinely think this is... We've got to look at it as a good opportunity to go out there and get another 3 points, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. And, if we are to get another 3 points, it's these early results that sort of set up the season a little bit, because teams will come to Carlisle and think, they've won the last couple of games, we better sit back a little bit against them. And it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just trying to sort of get the odds up here, basically, to see what the odds are in terms of this weekend's game. I mean, I'm looking at it. I think they are the favourites for this game, Colchester. 6-5. We're 5-2. I feel like it's a good bet, that, on us to win.
Yes.
I can't see
might
that.
have a bit of that.
It's only really the long journey that makes you think, maybe it will be tough. But, yeah, looking at it, I see nothing for us to fear, especially the way we played it on the opening day. And obviously with Harris coming in as a bit of a extra player in midfield as well to strengthen the squad. Yeah, I think to myself, yeah, nothing to worry about there, really, is there? Let's talk about United then, Mike. Injury-wise, Show Silva out for 8 weeks due to his hamstring tear. Big blow, that, isn't it? Because he's such a big threat coming off the bench.
Yeah, definitely.
Dickinson as well, we've mentioned already, with his knee injury. Senior and Dixon are both out long-term still. Taylor Charters, I think he might be about 2 or 3 weeks away still from recovery.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was 6 weeks, so that's one positive. So he can fill the role as backup left wing back, can't he, once he's fit. And then, yeah, hopefully Devitt can return from his illness. That was a bit of a blow before the game, wasn't it? Because we could have done with him maybe for the last 10 or 15 minutes just to, give us a little bit of calmness in the midfield. We didn't need it in the end, obviously, but it would have been handy to have that.
But I think even when Devitt's fit, I think he's going to have a job getting back into the starting 11 now.
Yeah, definitely. But I think he'll be happy to work his way in from the bench as well, I reckon. But would you make any changes to the start 11?
To be honest, no. If everyone's all fit and ready to go again, I think stick with the same team as last week. Yeah,
just maybe changes on the bench. Would you maybe trying to think? Maybe Lewis Bell comes out for Harris possibly, and then if what's his name, Devitt's fit as well, maybe he comes in for someone on the bench possibly.
Yeah. Obviously, it depends on fitness. And I mean, I'd imagine Harris would be fit, but I wouldn't chuck him straight into the starting lineup straight away. He's got to earn it like everyone else.
Got to remember as well, we obviously got the game on Tuesday night as well. We're going to preview that separately, the game against Shrewsbury Town.
Yeah.
For that, you potentially then look ahead to that game and think, right, your likes of Hilton and your Harris and your Whelan and maybe even Jack Ellis get a chance to play in that game possibly.
Yeah, definitely. So it'll be a good chance to rotate a little bit. And Shrewsbury, obviously we'll touch on it later, but it's one of them games where it's not like we need our strongest 11, and I think they'll be resting a few players as well, won't they?
Yeah, definitely. So Amari Patrick stays on the bench as well, you think? Well, he became a father for the first time this week. Congratulations, Amari, before we forget.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, wasn't it? Paul Simpson's post-match comments where he said that he said to Amari, I understand if you want to be there for the birth of your child because, the child wasn't born yet. And Amari said, no, I've got family who'll be there for that. I want to play. So, what a man. But yeah, it's one of them. I think Patrick's maybe better in away games and Dennis is better in home games. But obviously Patrick is not long come back off an injury, so I don't know how fit he would be.
And you don't drop your goal scorer, do you? That's the other thing as well.
Exactly.
He scored on the opening day. You back him to have a bit of confidence and get a goal scoring run going. And so I think we're going into this game nice and confident. We'll do the predictions now. Mike, you're going to keep a score this season for us, aren't you, in terms of predictions?
Yes.
You've worked out a way of doing this.
Yeah. So we've got a little leaderboard of you get 1 point for predicting the correct score and 1 point per goal scorer. Obviously, last week we all got the score wrong, but Dan was the only one to predict that Dennis would score. So Dan is currently top with 1 point, while you and me have 0 points.
Yeah, good start to the season, that, isn't it, really? Yeah. So there you go. So we'll do our predictions now. Do you want to go first, Mike?
Yeah, go on. So I'm going to go for another 1-0 win, and I'm going to go with Moxon as our goal scorer. Okay.
I'm going to go for a 2-0 win this time. And I think goals... I was going to say Moxon as well there, just to cut off any chance of you going ahead of me and the things. But no, I'm going to go for Dennis to get another and Morgan Feeney to get the other one. There you go. So Feeney and Dennis to get the goals in that game. Right, so Dan's also sending his predictions. So here's what Dan had to say.
I'm going to go for a hard-fought 2-1 win with goals from Christian Dennis and Amari Patrick scoring after the birth of his little one through the week.
Oh, there you go. Dan's cut off one of my goal scorers there. So he'll definitely be ahead of me if Dennis scores at least. So there you go. So that's the prediction. So before we go on to doing the X-Blue section, let's try and answer Dan's question. Let's quickly have Dan's question again, just to remind us what it was.
Today's quiz question. In January 2014, we got beat 4-2 at home to Colchester United. We had 7 different nationalities playing for our team that day. Can you name all 7 and at least one player for each nationality?
Ooh. Right. 7 different nationalities.
Well, it's the season we went down, isn't it? So
was it January 2014, was it? You said,
yeah.
Okay, so...
it depends when in January, because we had a mental transfer window, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, let's go first up English. And Matty Robson, I'm going to say, is English. So I think pretty sure he would have been playing round about then, definitely, because we played Sunderland in the Cup and he played in that.
Failing that, Jordan Pickford was obviously...
Yeah.
I'm going to go Tom Lawrence for Wales.
Good call, Tom Lawrence. Oh, was he still there then? He might have gone back by then.
No, he... Ooh.
That's a good question, isn't it? You see, he might well have left.
Yeah, it could be. I'm sure that we had someone Welsh though.
Probably. We had some random Welsh person in there. Trying to think. So English definitely. French. There's obviously a French one, isn't there? Pascal Chimbonda. So there's your Frenchman in there. We had. So we got that. So we got 2 there: English and French.
Scottish. Lee Miller.
Yeah, I think Lee Miller might have been injured at this
point. He was injured a bit that season.
But then Scottish, we also had Greg Fleming, and he might have been playing about then. I can't remember whether.
Oh, he might have done. Yeah, he played a couple of games around then.
Oh, this is a tough one. So we're going to English, French, Scottish. There's bound to be an Irish in there. I'm sure there was one at that point.
Yeah. Maybe Northern Irish as well. Because Well, we had, Oliver Norwood would have left by then.
No, he was a few years before that.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a very tough one, actually. He's caught us all bit. It's because of the date that's really thrown me.
Did we have the Belgian Charny Emagagumi?
You might be right on that one, yeah, because at first I was going to say he only made one appearance, but he didn't. I think he made 4 appearances, didn't he? So, Shanri Ekamanga, I think that was his name.
That's the one.
So Belgian. So I think we've got 5 now. So there's 2 more to get, isn't there?
Yeah. How many nationalities have we had, really?
Quite a few. But I'm trying to think of this period. We didn't have that many, did we?
So this was the same season. We had Bugno this season, but he's
barely played. He played at the start of the season, then didn't play.
Yeah,
again.
exactly.
In fact, no, he was the season before. Bunyo was the season before, actually.
Oh, he was, yeah.
So Matty Robson probably left back. I was trying to work out who was in the team and who was starting and stuff like that.
Lewis Guy, obviously, that's another English.
Yeah.
If Robson fails.
I'm struggling.
Sam Byrne would be an Irish striker.
Yeah. Oh, God, don't remind me.
Yeah.
He was god awful as well, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Sam Byrne, fair play. He's probably one. Definitely for the Irish one. I'm trying to think of all the other loan players we had on all the short terms and stuff, and I think we're stuck on about 5. Should we just go for Dan's answers? So
yeah, go on.
Because we're going to be here all day anyway. So here's Dan's answers to the question.
So the 7 are: we had 4 Englishmen. We had Matty Robson, Brad Potts, David Amu, and Courtney Meppenwalter. We had 2 Scotsmen, Lee Miller and Greg Fleming. A Welshman in Tom Lawrence, and an Irish player in James Barrett. We had a Frenchman in Pascal Chimbonda, a German in Max Emer, and a Ghanaian in Prince Balban.
You know what? I was going to say Max Emer, but I was thinking to myself, I think he was in the first half of the season. I don't think he was there around about then.
I never think of James Barrett as Irish either.
No, you always forget that.
He's one of them whose grandma drank Guinness once or whatever.
He played for the under-21s, didn't he? So good question, that one, Dan. If anyone managed to get all 7, well done, because I think most of us were struggling to get some of those. So there you go. Right, well, let's round up today's episode by doing the X-Files section, Mike. Not as busy as it has been at times last season. We haven't got the Premier League back yet, and a lot of the non-leagues aren't back either, which we get a lot of goals from, don't we? So we're sort of just relying on a few bits and pieces at the moment. Brandon Comley, what a debut for him for Walsall, wasn't it? 4-0 win over Hartlepool United on the opening day. They're top of I don't like Tom on top of the league stuff at this point because it's pointless. I pine for the days when I think they used to not publish the league table. I think it was 6 games in, didn't they, back in the day? Nowadays,
before my time.
Game. Oh, thank you. Cheers. That made me feel like the grand idea. So Brandon Comley scored in the impressive 4-0 win for Hartlepool United. Jack Marriott, as usual, scored for Peterborough United. He seems to be on a bit of a run for them now, doesn't he? So he's scoring quite a few. Paddy Madden, he scored in Stockport County's 3-2 defeat to Barrow on the opening. What a result for Barrow that is. Yeah. I know Dan's going to be really annoyed that we're talking about this, but genuinely really impressive. I know they obviously tailed off the second half, but I don't think anyone... I think they are the ultimate coupon buster this weekend, aren't they? I think it's fair to say. They definitely ruined a lot of people's weekends, but really impressive, and I think Dan's prediction that they will be down in the bottom 2 is going to be a bit wide of the mark, I'm afraid. I think while they've got a decent manager who could keep them well away from trouble. Not as high as us. Not as high as us, but I think it may well prove to be a smart appointment by them. James Tavernier scored in Rangers' 2-1 win over Livingston. And little one that connects 2 things here. Simon Grand, he signed for non-league side Sharnock Richard 30 years after he originally played for them. He started out there as a kid, basically, before he went to Rochdale. So he re-signed for them, and he scored on his debut, a late equaliser.
Yeah.
Brilliant story, that one, isn't it? Really,
I think he's 39
I think
now?
so, yeah. So he would have been 9 years old when he played for them, so amazing. XYTS, Josh Barnett, he signed for Northern League side Horden Community Welfare FC. Former loanee Mika Obira has turned up at Boston United. I don't know if he's left Huddersfield Town or not, or he's just gone there and tried on loan, but he's at Boston United, basically. And a good bit of news for former Blue Mike Jones. I didn't realise this. He's been on trial at Chesterfield this summer, and he's signed a permanent deal with them now. And
that's a good move for him.
It's a really good move for him as well, because I know he's based around that way, isn't he? I know he's got his little kid there, so fantastic for him. Really, really good move, and I think all Blues fans will wish him the best, because he was a great player for us, wasn't he? And didn't work out for him at Barrow with the injuries and that kind of thing, but hopefully in the National League he can make a big difference for Chesterfield for the season ahead, can't he? I think that's it, Mike, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, I think so.
We've covered everything. It's another busy week. Feeling very happy, very, very optimistic for the new season, aren't we, really?
Yeah, hopefully we still feel the same way next week after after the Colchester game. And
we are in a good position though, aren't we? In that these opening games give us a really good chance to get off to a good start, don't they? We haven't got like a Mansfield or a Bradford or a Stockport.
No, the fixture list has been kind to us. Yeah. So,
but you've got to take advantage of that, haven't you? Really. So
definitely.
So that's good news for us. In terms of upcoming episodes, so we are going to do a preview episode for the Shrewsbury game, just a little separate one. We'll do a little bit of review of the Colchester game. If you want to do one of the 60-second reviews for the Colchester game, please do, because we're not going to be there. So it'll be ideal if we can get someone who's at least watched it or been to the game to tell us their thoughts on it as well. So we'll be relying on Radio Cumbria and whatnot for our views on that. So we're going to do a preview one, but we're going to do a little special one because we've got a special guest coming on it. We've got Blues fan Tim Pocock, who you may remember has been the editor of the So Jack Ashurst Wears My Shirt fanzine back in the day. He's kindly going to come on and talk about his new memoir, Jack Shirt Dean's Bottoms. Talking about his life following Carlisle United. He sent me a copy up today. I've got 2 copies actually. I've got one to read myself, which I'm going to do over the next couple of days so we can have a good chat about it on the episode. But he's also given us one to give away as a prize. So we'll be doing a competition in that episode. So if you want a chance to win, give the episode a listen, because there would certainly be clues as to the answer to the question we'll put in that episode, I'm pretty sure. So chance to win yourself a copy of the book. If you haven't already, if you're not... don't want to wait for the competition, you can buy a copy in the Blues store or online. Basically, it's on sale on Amazon, I think. So just search for Jack Shirt's Dino's Bottoms. That's the full name of the book. Interesting name, isn't it? And after that, obviously, we'll be back next week to preview the Swindon game when everyone's favourite little troll makes his return to Brunton Park, unless he's been sold by them by Swindon. I don't know, but. Yes, I'm sure we'll be talking about that. But I'm sure we'll be a lot more prepared for Mr. McCurdy's return this season, won't we? I think it's fair to say.
Don't say that.
Just tempted fate there, haven't I, basically?
Yeah.
There you go. Mike, thanks for joining me. I know you're off to get on with other bits now, so thanks so much for giving me your time as usual. Thanks everyone for listening, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.